Welcome to Throne Talk. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button and join the court because trust me, there's no shortage of tea to spill, and you won't want to miss a single drop. Alright, folks, grab your crowns and settle in, because today, we're diving into one of the most fascinating stories in royal history. We're talking about the Queen's personal life, her marriage, her family, and all the behind-the-scenes drama that made her not just a queen, but a true symbol of love, duty, and perseverance. Now, if you're new here, welcome to Throne Talk. Be sure to hit that subscribe button, because you're not going to want to miss any of the royal adventures we'll be taking together. Let's start with the most iconic love story of the 20th century. Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip. It all began in 1934 when a young Elizabeth, only 8 years old, first met Philip Mountbatten, the dashing Greek prince. Imagine that. 2 kids from different royal families meeting at a wedding. Little did anyone know, this innocent encounter would eventually lead to one of the longest-lasting marriages in royal history. They were both young, but Philip's charm and Elizabeth's grace were immediately evident. Fast forward a few years to 1947, when Elizabeth, now 21, and Philip, 26, were officially engaged. The announcement came as a bit of a surprise to the public, especially since Philip wasn't exactly British. He was born into the Greek and Danish royal families, but had to give up his titles when he married Elizabeth. Talk about a sacrifice, right? No more prince title, but he got something much better: Elizabeth's heart. Philip's love for her was clear, and this wasn't just a political alliance, it was a true love story. On November 20, 1947, Elizabeth and Philip tied the knot in a ceremony that captivated the world. It wasn't the lavish wedding we'd expect today, given the post-war austerity in Britain, but it was still a royal affair. The Queen wore a beautiful ivory gown designed by Norman Hartnell, and the couple looked every bit the fairy tale pair. I mean, can you imagine? It's like the royal version of The Bachelor, but with much higher stakes. Not only was Elizabeth now a married woman, but she was also preparing for the role of a lifetime, becoming Queen of England. Their marriage was certainly not without its challenges, though. Let's be real, any royal marriage is bound to come with its own set of struggles. They were not just husband and wife. They were partners in the very public, often stressful, world of monarchy. They both knew what they were getting into when they said "I do," but they also supported each other every step of the way. Elizabeth and Philip were a team, and it was clear that their bond ran deep. In the early years of their marriage, Philip was still finding his place within the royal family. He had been given the title Duke of Edinburgh upon his marriage, but there was a sense of him being the outsider. The media was also quick to criticize his sometimes blunt manner and his struggle to fit into the often stuffy royal circle. But Elizabeth, ever the supportive wife, stood by him through it all. She saw a man who was funny, intelligent, and fiercely loyal. So while the press may have had a field day, behind closed doors, their relationship was rooted in mutual respect and affection. Their first few years were spent building their family, and the royal couple wasted no time. Just a year after their wedding, Elizabeth gave birth to their first child, Prince Charles. Philip was thrilled, and despite his duties, he was incredibly hands-on with raising his children. That's right, Philip was not just the Duke. He was also a loving father, making time for his kids despite the pressures of royal life. It's a side of him that many didn't see, but it was one of the things that helped solidify the bond between him and Elizabeth. In the years that followed, the royal couple's family grew, with Princess Anne joining the fold in 1950, followed by Prince Andrew in 1960, and Prince Edward in 1964. Through it all, Elizabeth and Philip continued to support one another, even when the weight of their royal duties grew heavier. It wasn't always easy. Being queen and consort meant navigating complex relationships with both family and country. But their commitment to each other never wavered. Their marriage was often put under the microscope. It's one thing to be a public figure, but it's another to have your personal life constantly examined. The tabloids weren't always kind, and people were quick to judge their relationship, especially given the pressures of Philip's constant absence due to royal duties. But what many didn't realize was that their love wasn't just about public appearances. They were 2 individuals who made an incredible team. Even though Philip sometimes had to take a step back in the limelight, especially when Elizabeth became queen, he was never far from her side. The bond they shared was more than just royal protocol. It was real. As the years went on, and their children grew, the Queen and Prince Philip experienced the challenges and triumphs that come with raising a family. Their children had to navigate their own paths, and Elizabeth and Philip supported them through everything, from their schooling to their eventual roles in the royal family. But it wasn't always easy. For example, Prince Charles, as the heir to the throne, was often under immense pressure. And let's not forget the challenges Princess Diana brought into the family, both for Charles and for the monarchy as a whole. But despite the ups and downs, Elizabeth and Philip weathered the storm together. Philip was always there for his wife, offering guidance, support, and love. They were true partners, proving that a royal marriage could be based on more than just titles and tradition. It could be grounded in something much deeper. Their commitment to each other lasted well into their golden years. Even as they both grew older, and Philip retired from his royal duties in 2017, they continued to stand by each other. Their public appearances were fewer, but the affection between them was clear. They were a couple who had been through decades of trials and triumphs, and their marriage stood as a testament to resilience, loyalty, and love. Now, before I go on, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell, so you don't miss the next part of this royal journey. We'll be diving deeper into their family dynamics, their children, and how their legacy lives on today. But before that, let's take a moment to appreciate just how remarkable Elizabeth and Philip's love story was. They were a true team, and their marriage set the foundation for the royal family's survival and success for decades. Stay tuned for more, because this story is far from over. So, after Elizabeth and Philip were married and started their family, things didn't exactly slow down. In fact, they took off at a whirlwind pace. They had their first child, Prince Charles, less than a year after their wedding. And you might be wondering, what was it like for Elizabeth, suddenly becoming a mother and balancing it with her royal duties? Well, let's just say, it wasn't easy. Being a queen and a new mother isn't exactly the same as being a regular person with a 9-to-5 job. There's no maternity leave in the monarchy. But Elizabeth, as always, rose to the occasion. Prince Charles was born in 1948 and was, of course, the heir to the throne. Can you imagine the pressure of being born into the royal family, knowing that one day you're going to rule a country? From the very beginning, Charles's life was shaped by that heavy responsibility. And while Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip adored their firstborn son, they also had to navigate the challenges of raising him in the royal spotlight. What you might not know is that Elizabeth and Philip were relatively hands-on parents, at least in the early years. Yes, they had royal nannies, as you'd expect, but they were still deeply involved in their children's lives. They made sure their kids were raised with a sense of duty, responsibility, and respect for tradition. But, like any family, things weren't always picture-perfect. Prince Charles, as we all know, had his own struggles growing up in the public eye. And that's where the dynamics of the royal family started to evolve. As the years went on, the royal couple added more children to their growing family. Princess Anne came next in 1950, followed by Prince Andrew in 1960, and Prince Edward in 1964. Each of them brought their own unique personalities to the family, and Elizabeth and Philip had to adjust their parenting styles to accommodate each child's needs. Let's talk about Princess Anne for a moment, because she's often overshadowed by her brothers, but she's a force to be reckoned with in her own right. And was known for her strong, independent spirit. She didn't exactly follow the traditional path expected of royal women, and you know what? She didn't care. And that's one of the things we love about her. Prince Andrew and Prince Edward, on the other hand, grew up during a time when the royal family was facing more public scrutiny. By the time they were born, the monarchy was already undergoing some major shifts. But despite the challenges, Elizabeth and Philip did their best to create a stable, loving home for their children. They were determined to give their kids a sense of normalcy, despite being part of the most famous family in the world. Now, as we talk about their children, let's touch on something really interesting. The relationship between Elizabeth and her kids. We've all seen the images of the Queen with her children. Those public appearances where she's all smiles, waving to the crowds, and looking every bit the picture of a perfect mother. But behind the scenes, things weren't always so idyllic. It's no secret that the Queen's relationship with her eldest son, Prince Charles, has had its ups and downs. As the heir to the throne, Charles carried a weight on his shoulders that none of his siblings had to bear. And that came with its own set of complications. From a young age, Charles was thrust into the limelight, often expected to follow in his mother's footsteps and take on the responsibilities of monarchy before he was ready. And as he grew older, the pressures only mounted. His tumultuous relationship with Princess Diana added even more strain to his relationship with the royal family. Elizabeth, as a mother, had to balance her role as queen with her role as a parent. She had to find a way to support her son while also upholding the traditions of the monarchy. It wasn't easy. But that's the thing about the Queen. No matter how difficult things got, she always did what was best for the monarchy. And that included supporting her children, even when the media didn't understand. Then, of course, there's the matter of the Queen's own relationship with Prince Philip. We've talked about their marriage and how they were true partners in every sense of the word. But let's dive a little deeper into how they managed to keep things going strong throughout the years, even as their family grew and the pressures of royal life intensified. If you think about it, Elizabeth and Philip had a pretty unique dynamic. Philip, as consort, didn't have an official role in the government or the monarchy in the same way Elizabeth did. But he still had a significant impact on the royal family, particularly when it came to his role as a father and grandfather. Philip was known for his sometimes blunt no-nonsense approach, and he wasn't afraid to speak his mind. But that's also part of what made him such an important figure in Elizabeth's life. He wasn't just the Queen's husband. He was her partner, her sounding board, and her closest confidant. When the world around them was filled with chaos, they had each other to lean on. As the years went by, the Queen's children became more involved in royal duties, taking on responsibilities that would one day be passed down to them. Charles became more prominent in his role as the Prince of Wales, and his siblings, and Andrew and Edward, began to step up in their own ways. The royal family was slowly transitioning from the reign of Elizabeth to the next generation, and that brought with it its own set of challenges. But despite all the changes, one thing remained constant: the Queen's devotion to her family. No matter how busy she got, no matter how much the world demanded from her, she always made time for her children and grandchildren. She had a job to do, but family was everything. In the next few decades, the royal family would face its biggest test yet. Princess Diana, Charles's beloved first wife, became one of the most talked-about figures in the world. Her marriage to Charles was, in many ways, a fairy tale, until it wasn't. The Queen and Philip had to navigate the aftermath of the collapse of that marriage, and it wasn't easy. But again, they showed the world what it meant to support family through thick and thin. Even as scandals rocked the royal family, Elizabeth remained steadfast in her role as both a mother and a monarch. And let's not forget the most recent chapter in the royal family's story: the next generation of royals. Elizabeth's grandchildren, including Prince William and Prince Harry, have brought their own energy to the family. We've seen them take on public roles, showing that the future of the monarchy is in good hands. But it's also clear that Elizabeth's legacy lives on through them. They are the product of her love for Philip, her dedication to duty, and her unwavering commitment to her family. It's not always easy to live in the public eye, but the Queen and Prince Philip proved that with love, loyalty, and a sense of humor, it's possible to keep a family strong. They've weathered wars, scandals, and even the test of time itself. But through it all, they've remained united. Now, before we wrap up, make sure you subscribe and click that notification bell, because we're not done yet. Next time, we'll talk about the legacy Elizabeth and Philip have left behind, what their marriage and family mean for future generations of the royal family and the world at large. You won't want to miss it. So, as we close, think about the Queen and Prince Philip. Their love wasn't just about fairy tale moments. It was about resilience, commitment, and the strength to face any challenge head-on. It wasn't always easy, but it was always worth it. And that's something we can all take away from their incredible story. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next video, where we continue exploring the royal legacy that lives on through Elizabeth and Philip's extraordinary family.